Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Ace in the Hole here on the XWE Network, where I, your friendly neighborhood Ace Nick White, attempts to dig angles out of the holes that bookers have put them in. So everybody's been doing a great job. Like, comment, and subscribe. Please continue to do that. Share the video. Call a buddy. Tell a friend. Let them all know what we're doing here. Now, every so often in this wrestling business, we see somebody for the first time on our television screens, and we know that's going to be something special. I mean, talk about Rocky Maivia, Survivor Series 1997. Talk about John Cena slapping the taste out of Kurt Angle's mouth to kick off the Ruthless Aggression era. Talk about Batista as a deacon. Okay, maybe they're not all winners from the very beginning, but one guy that was comes over from Scotland. He's got ruggedly handsome good looks, long hair. He's built like a god. He can wrestle. He can talk. He seems to be the total package. He quickly gains titles, has great matches, but within 2 to 3 years, he's in the three-man band playing air guitar. He's losing matches to little people. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that, but when you're 6'5", 240 pounds, and you're Vince McMahon's chosen one, something went wrong. And then, not to be outdone, he gets fired. Then we move on a couple years. He's back. He's a monster. He's finally getting the push he deserved. He wins the 2020 Royal Rumble, and if WrestleMania, if we are blessed to have it, happens on April the 5th, Drew McIntyre will be taking on Brock Lesnar for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. But what if there was no need for a second run? What if the first run had have gone the way it should have? What if it had have been the success it was supposed to be? Well, that's exactly what I'm here to talk about. That's exactly what this episode of the Ace in the Hole is going to cover. We're going to talk about Drew McIntyre's first WWE run.
And I dream broken dreams, I make them come true. I make them for you.
Now, for all you could say about how Drew McIntyre's first run ended, the beginning was better than most people could have ever asked for, better than pretty much anyone in company history has ever received. He debuts on SmackDown with Dave Taylor as his manager. Gets a couple of wins over the Majors brothers. They decide it's not the right time. Send him down to FCW to get a little bit of polish, but they bring him back. And they don't just bring him back as anything. Vince McMahon himself personally shows up on SmackDown, debuts Drew McIntyre as the chosen one. Within weeks, McIntyre becomes the Intercontinental Champion. And then every time there's supposed to be a bump in the road for him, Vince McMahon sends down a memo, makes a phone call, or otherwise interferes to keep Drew McIntyre in a position of power, to keep that Intercontinental title around his waist. Even when Teddy Long tries to strip him of it, Vince McMahon says, nope, and I don't care that you already crowned a new champion. Drew McIntyre's my guy. When Drew McIntyre goes on a losing streak in Money in the Bank qualifying matches heading into WrestleMania 26, Vince McMahon finally just throws some unnamed, unsigned jobber at him so he can get the win and get into Money in the Bank. Because that's what Vince McMahon wants. Vince McMahon sees Drew McIntyre as the future of the company. Sees him as the guy who he can build around for a decade to come. So we move on to WrestleMania. And there's Drew McIntyre, and he's in Money in the Bank against the likes of Matt Hardy and Christian, the Real World eventual winner Jack Swagger, Evan Bourne, a multitude of others. was a 10-man Money in the Bank, the most that had ever been in the match. Now this is where things change just a little bit. Because in this world, Drew McIntyre, he wins the Money in the Bank match, despite the fact that everyone else in that match started out to get him. He overcomes the odds. Oh, he cheats. He hits a future shock on a ladder on, let's say, Matt Hardy. Evan Bourne, the underdog of the Millennium, is finally right about to climb the ladder. He's already hit the shooting star off a ladder onto Christian, one of the most memorable spots in Money in the Bank history. But Drew McIntyre has none of it. He hits him with a low blow, pushes him all the way down to the floor, sets the ladder up. They climbs to grab the Money in the Bank briefcase. So we fast forward just 2 days. 5 in the wrestling world, because of course it aired on Friday. But we fast forward to the next SmackDown. Chris Jericho and Edge have a war to start the show. It's not a match. It's just Edge repeatedly spearing Chris Jericho. Jericho's ribs are already hurt from taking a spear through a table to end their match at WrestleMania 26. But the World Heavyweight Champion is laid out by Edge. Chris Jericho's down for the count. And we hear perhaps the greatest theme song in WWE history, Broken Dreams by Shaman's Harvest, play. And Mr. Money in the Bank, Drew McIntyre, slowly saunters down to the ring. He stands over the fallen Chris Jericho and proceeds to cut a promo about how this is his moment, how this is what he has been waiting for. This is what Vince McMahon chose him for. The promo goes on for seemingly ever. 3, 4, 5 minutes he's talking. Until finally Jericho starts to stand back up. So McIntyre removes his robe. He hands the briefcase to the referee. The referee has the announcer make the announcements. Tony Chimmel announces that this is Drew McIntyre's Money in the Bank cash-in for the World Heavyweight Championship. The bell rings. McIntyre, with a huge grin on his face, turns around directly into a code breaker. Chris Jericho throws one limp arm over the body of Drew McIntyre. And it's over. No sooner did Drew McIntyre win the Money in the Bank briefcase than he lost it. 48 hours of real time, and it was over. Now, understandably, Drew McIntyre is livid when he finally realizes what's happened. And he takes it out on anyone and everyone he can. But Matt Hardy, for some reason, becomes his main target. He beats him up week after week. He sees him in the locker room and he hits him with a chair. Matt Hardy has a match and Drew McIntyre boots his face off with a move that will one day be known as the Claymore. Finally, they have a match, May the 7th, and Drew McIntyre snaps. He loses his absolute mind. He delivers the Future Shock DDT, but it's not enough. He goes and gets a chair and delivers another. He gets 2 chairs and stacks them on top of each other and does a third. Matt Hardy is laid waste to. We don't see Matt Hardy for weeks. But Teddy Long, the SmackDown general manager, will have none of it. He refuses to let this stand, and consequences be damned. Whatever Vince McMahon's going to do to him be damned. If this is his last decision, Drew McIntyre is stripped of the Intercontinental Championship, and he is sent home. So Drew does just that. He goes home. He needs the vacation anyway. And when he comes back after Kofi Kingston wins the tournament to crown a new Intercontinental Champion, Drew McIntyre walks right in, hands a piece of paper to Teddy Long, and is handed the Intercontinental title right back. Yeah, I know. That's what happened in the real world. But guess what? That was about as good as it was going to get. But Drew and Kofi go on a war. They face each other every week in different stipulations, and Kofi just can't seem to get the best of him until the Friday night before Money in the Bank, when Kofi Kingston finally pulls out a miracle in a last man standing match. He hits Drew with Trouble in Paradise, rolls him down to the floor, and throws every piece of equipment he can on top of Drew until Drew can't answer the 10 count. And this is 2 days before a Money in the Bank match. Drew McIntyre is against all odds once again. But Drew McIntyre does something that only one man before him had ever done, and no one has actually done since, unless you count Carmella's weird Money in the Bank reign. Drew McIntyre wins yet another Money in the Bank match. Oh, he cheats, and he has to put Kofi Kingston through the announce table in a reversal of fortune from what actually happened. But after it's all said and done, Drew McIntyre is holding the Money in the Bank briefcase in the middle of the ring. And the one thing Vince McMahon can't stop happens. Teddy Long walks down to the ring with two men in black suits. Drew, I hate to tell you this, playa, but these gentlemen are from immigration. Your work visa expires in about 2 hours. And unfortunately, I think it's going to take you about that long to pack up your stuff and get out of the arena, so they're going to go ahead and escort you out. But I'll let you keep the briefcase as a souvenir. Once again, Drew McIntyre's world has fallen apart in front of him. For months, Drew McIntyre isn't seen. He isn't heard from. There's no video packages hyping his return. It's as if he's completely forsaken. He's completely gone. Vince McMahon's dream has gone up in smoke. Until one fateful night in November at Survivor Series, Kane faces Edge, defending his World Heavyweight Championship. And Edge has got it right in the palm of his hands. He delivers a massive spear to Kane, lays him out, and then you hear a ruckus in the crowd. That everyone's shocked. Everyone's looking around because Drew McIntyre is running down the steps. Edge, having gone through 20 minutes of war with a big red machine, has no clue what's happening around him. As Drew McIntyre slides in his street clothes, Money in the Bank briefcase in hand, powers it down across the back of Edge's skull, knocking him unconscious. The match ends in a disqualification. Edge is your winner. But that's not what matters, because Drew McIntyre hands the Money in the Bank briefcase to the referee, frantically pointing at the announcer, ring it, ring the bell now. The referee does what he's supposed to do. He has this contract in hand, and although Drew McIntyre may or may not even work for the company, there's really no time to ask questions. Drew McIntyre gets down, hooks the leg, cradles Kane up real tight, and 1, 2, 3. Drew McIntyre is your new World Heavyweight Champion, or else that's how it appears. And we get a much clearer answer to that the following week on SmackDown, when Vince McMahon once again opens the show and says, "Ha ha! I told you he was the chosen one. And you didn't think Vince McMahon would let a little thing like the federal government stand in his way. Did you, pal?" He introduces Drew McIntyre, his chosen World Heavyweight Champion, who strolls down to the ring in a suit and tie. But the one problem is, simultaneously, Drew McIntyre and now, by default, Vince McMahon have drawn the ire of both Edge and Kane. Well, Kane gets his rematch at the December pay-per-view, where Vince McMahon proceeds to change the rules again and again and again. Until finally, after making it a no disqualification, no count out, you have to be counted to the pinfall of 5. Drew McIntyre blasts Kane across the back with a chair, hits him in the gut, throws it down, future shot DDT. Drew McIntyre wins his first defense of the World Heavyweight Championship. All while Edge watches on from the locker room. Because Vince McMahon has told Edge in no uncertain terms, you had your title shot in November, pal. Nothing I can do for you. You're just going to have to earn another one. It looks like you're going to start from the bottom of the barrel. So while Drew McIntyre preens with the new World Heavyweight Championship, Edge is defeating the Majors brothers and all sorts of various lower mid-card talents week in and week out. And it's usually the same thing. It's run-in, spear, pin. Until finally, the week before the Royal Rumble, Vince McMahon says, Edge, you're this close. All you got to do to face Drew McIntyre is win the Royal Rumble. The 40-man Royal Rumble, for those who had forgotten. And Drew McIntyre continues his winning ways. He gets to the Royal Rumble. He faces a returning Matt Hardy, who not only gets the chance to avenge his injury, but gets to take the World Heavyweight Championship. But it's not to be on this night, as a low blow and a future shot DDT keep the title in Drew McIntyre's hands. And Edge, unfortunately, draws number 5 in the Royal Rumble. He doesn't have to just beat 29 other men like normal. He has to beat 39, and he has to go through 35 of them that are going to come in after him. But luckily for Edge, and I'm sure you figured it out by this point, he does just that. He takes out Alberto Del Rio at the final 2 men. After Santino Marella makes a very good showing, because I really like that in real life. He takes out Alberto Del Rio to win the Royal Rumble. It is Edge versus Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania. But it's not just going to be any match. It's going to be an I Quit match. And Vince McMahon makes that for one very, very specific reason. Because he wants Edge to know he was never good enough to be a champion. His time had passed. He was so hell-bent on getting that title that was why Drew McIntyre was sent down to the ring at the moment he was. Vince McMahon was behind it the entire time. Because he knew that Drew McIntyre was the future of the company. So at WrestleMania, in an I Quit match, Drew McIntyre and Edge beat each other senseless. They hit each other with anything that isn't nailed down. Until finally, Vince McMahon strolls down to the ring. So he can watch his chosen champion get the win, but Edge sees him out of the corner of his eye, and he gets livid. Because he's not going to be screwed on this night. Not at WrestleMania. Not tonight. He is leaving with that World Heavyweight Championship. And he spears Drew, and as Vince McMahon slides into the ring, he stands up and Edge spears him too. Fortunately, knocking a man out doesn't win you an I Quit match. So he takes Drew McIntyre and he locks him in the execution, and he's grinding on it, and he's holding it, and he's twisting and turning until his best friend Christian comes out. Edge's best friend comes out, and he's cheering him on. He says, "You got him, Edge. You finally got him." he reaches in his pocket, throws powder in, and Edge is blinded. Christian pulls handcuffs out. He handcuffs one of Edge's hands and the other one to the ropes. Drew McIntyre throws right hands and right hands and right hands. See, Christian has been jealous of Edge for as long as anyone can remember. And he was definitely not going to let Edge get this moment. And if it gets him some bonus points with the boss, why not? So Christian and Drew McIntyre smile, they hug, as if they had planned this out all along, and perhaps they had. They roll out to the floor, they get kendo sticks, and proceed to just blast Edge in the ribs and the legs and the arms. They're just beating him senseless, and the man is defenseless. Until finally, he has no choice but to quit. Vince McMahon lays in one last super insulting slap. Unfortunately, Edge never even gets to get revenge because even in this fantasy world, neck injuries are very real. And he was gone for 10 years. Drew McIntyre's reign lasts for months, almost a year. It's amazing to think what could have been. Unfortunately, that's not what we got. We got an air guitar and a guy that got beaten the crap out of for 2 years. But that's not what this is about. This was about finding out how to rebook it, reimagine it, and make it into something much, much better. I hope that's what I've done for you. Hopefully 1 year of Drew McIntyre being a World Heavyweight Champion is a little bit better than a three-man band. But if you enjoyed it, like, comment, subscribe, share the video, call a buddy, tell a friend. Thank you